עצמנו לכל הצדיקים האמיתים שדרנו ובכל הצדיקים האמיתים שוכנע לך קדוש שמשב הארץ עם מבחן רבנו הקדוש צדיק יסודנו נחמן ובמקור חוכמה רבנו נחמן ופגם את שמחה נחמן מאומן זכותו תגן עלינו ועל כל ישראל אמן. Okay, Tov. By the way, it's going to be casual, so whoever has questions, this, that, cut me off. That way, Bezrat Hashem will address everything on the spot. But Bezrat Hashem, John wanted me to do a class tonight on the Petek. And I said it was a very good idea. Because everyone speaks about the Petek, we speak about the song, נחמן, מאומן, we speak about Rebbe Israel, we speak about Breslev, but people don't understand what it really means. And there's lots of sodot within the Petek, there's lots of secrets. We're going to speak about the story of Rebbe Israel. I think once we see the story of Rebbe Israel, we're going to see the story of Breslev. We're going to understand what it means to serve Hashem. Because people today think they understand what it means to serve Hashem, and they have no idea what it means to serve Hashem. Until you hear stories of real tzaddikim amitim, and you see what they went through, and the suffering they had to go through, and everything they did, the mesirut nefesh, the simcha they lived throughout their life, to serve Hashem in the ups and in the downs. And then from that place, you see what it really means to be an oved Hashem, to be to serve Hashem properly. To start the story of Rebbe Israel Dov Odesser, I think it's a fitting thing, especially to understand what it is to be a student of Rabbeinu HaKadosh, Rabbi נחman, and what it means to follow Rabbi Nachman's advice. Because if there's anyone we could say in the previous generations that did this, and we can say the best of the Chassid is Rebbe Israel Dov Odesser. And in his merit, Baruch Hashem, everyone at this table today, anytime they say the word Rabbi נחman, it's in his merit. Because be'emet la'amito, if you really want to go to the bottom of it, if Rabbi Israel did not publish the Petek, if he did not do the printing press, the Keren, today, Breslev would be 40, 50 families, 100 families come across the world, scattered, nothing there. Today, Uman, the way you see it, everything the way you see, whether it's the discotheque or the people dancing or a bunch of the people in the yeshiva, attend this and that, and people come close to Rabbeinu and see the Sfarim of Rabbeinu is because of Rabbi Israel Mesirut Nefesh. So to understand Rabbi Nachman, the truth is, you need to read Rabbi Israel's letters because you're going to understand what it means to nullify yourself. And that's the quality that made Rabbi Israel Rabbi Israel. What it means to nullify yourself and not to give up. Because that's what Rabbeinu's Torah is. We're going to study the story tonight of the Inyan of En Shum Yehush. How Rabbeinu brought the teaching and the famous, maybe his most famous saying ever, that there's no such thing as despair in the world, klal, at all. En Shum Yehush Ba'olam klal. We're going to speak about how he brought that in Sichot Aran, the entire story, and how the entire Petek is this. In practicality, after Rabbeinu's passing, we're going to explain everything. Bezrat Hashem. But if you guys have questions and understanding timeline and this and that, ask me, or we're going to do our best to get into it. But it starts in, obviously, after Rabbeinu passed away in 1810, Tafkuf Ayin Aref, 5571. Rabbeinu essentially left Rabbi Natan all his inheritance, and he said, Yalla, start printing the books. Go. Rabbeinu said, I want to dwell amongst you guys. That's what he told Rabbi Natan a couple hours before he passed away. I want to stay here. And he told Rabbi Natan, be strong and courageous. He was telling Rabbi Natan, be strong. And Rabbi Natan couldn't believe his eyes after Rabbeinu passed away. He didn't think Rabbeinu was going to die. He was refusing to believe. If you read it in his diary, Yemem Moranat, if you read in Chayim Moran, Rabbi Natan, when he's writing it, he's saying Rabbeinu was a few hours from passing away, and we did not understand, realize, we did not clock the fact that he was leaving this world in a couple hours. We thought there was no way Hashem would leave us to be orphans. No way. And Rabbi Natan thought they still had a lot to do. They still had a lot to write. They still had a lot to accomplish. A couple hours later, Rabbeinu passes away, and Rabbi Natan and all the students are crying. And Rabbi Natan, very hard for him to receive consolation. Very hard. And for years and years, Rabbi Natan went through suffering, printing the books, encountering opposition and tremendous obstacles through all the big Rabbanim at the time, all the big Hasidim even. They used to come and attack him. They used to throw stones at Rabbi Natan and his wife. They used to cause him embarrassment in public. They tried killing Rabbi Natan. They killed another Natan instead because they thought it was Rabbi Natan. In the mikveh, they tried killing him. To show you the opposition that exists when something holy is happening. Rabbi נחman teaches us something very big. When you're going to accomplish something kadosh, holy, no, the holier it is, the more obstacles there are to get there. Getting married, bunch of obstacles. Trying to serve Hashem, obstacles. Waking up chatzot, obstacles. Reading Tikkun HaKlali, obstacles. It's 10 Tehillim, but there's obstacles. Going to the mikveh, there's obstacles. Anything, to study Torah, there's obstacles. To pray, there's obstacles. Anytime you're going to do something for Hashem Yitbarach, the more kadosh it is, the bigger the obstacles. And the biggest one of all is attaching yourself to the tzaddik. Traveling to the tzaddik. This one has a tremendous amount of obstacles surrounding this, because the truth is the entire Torah depends on it. Like Rabbeinu says in Torah, Kuf Chav Gimyon, 123, העיקר והיסוד שהכל תלוי בו, להתקרב ולקשר לעצמו לצדיק שבדור. I'm misquoting, but one or two words, but the main idea is this. The main thing that everything is dependent on, to attach yourself to the tzaddik of the generation. And people are trying to understand what this means. They open up Likutei Moharan. What does it mean tzaddik shebador? What does it mean tzaddik of the generation? What does it mean to attach yourself to tzaddik? Why is this such a fundamental concept? Why is it? And why is it that Rabbi Nachman's entire Torah, if you want to look through the entire Torah, look, I just read, open up this random page. Achda, ki hatzadik ha'emet mechaya etzmo b'to hazman. And you'll go to the next page, and then you'll see another inyan of the tzaddik. Anytime you'll see Rabbeinu's Torah, it's always the inyan of the tzaddik. Always the inyan. וצריכים לבקש מאוד מהשם יתברך לזכות להתקרב לצדיק האמת. You have to beg Hashem יתברך that you draw close to the true tzaddik. Why is every page speaking about the tzaddik, 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 tzaddik? And you ask yourself the question, what's so important about attaching yourself to the tzaddik? People always ask themselves this question, can't I just attach myself to Hashem? So let's see what Rabbeinu says in Chayei Moharan. Rabbeinu writes in Chayei Moharan, in Rabbi Natan's biography of Rabbeinu, which is obviously all Rabbeinu's quotes and Rabbeinu's sayings, word for word. Look what Rabbi Natan writes in Siman Resh Tzadik Tet, 299. פעם אחת דיבר עמי מעניין שאי אפשר להיות איש כשר באמת כי אם כשמתקרבים להצדיק האמת שבדור. One time Rabbi Natan came to Rabbeinu, and Rabbeinu was speaking with Rabbi Natan about this topic. And what is it? That it's impossible to be a truly upright individual. Rabbeinu is saying, you can be an ish kasher, but an ish kasher be'emet, to be a truly upright individual, truthfully, meaning you're not faking it in front of everyone. Be'emet with Hashem. Ki im kshemitkarvin ha'tzadik ha'emet shebador, except by attaching yourself to the true tzaddik of the generation. It's impossible. Ana ve'amar, Rabbeinu said like this, Kodem shenimtza tzaddik ha'emet ba'olam, before the true tzaddik is in the world, meaning in generations where there isn't a true tzaddik, and now this is where we understand what it means to be a true tzaddik, because everyone's going to say, did the true tzaddik shebador need to be alive, or can it be dead? And Rabbeinu is saying, actually, no. The true tzaddik has nothing to do whether you're alive or dead. And we're going to speak about that with regard to the Petek tonight. And the Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, and the breaking of the Luchot, and the exile. We're going to speak about all of it tonight. The truth is, the true tzaddik does not need to be physically alive to guide the generation. How do we know it? Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu, after he passed away, who was the next successor? Yoshua. But Yoshua was never the Rav of the generation. Yoshua was always a Na'ach. He was always a young person. He was always what? The student of Moshe. He never became this big leader to say that I am now the manhig. Now, of course, Yoshua led them into Eretz Israel. But Yoshua was just an illumination and a reflection of the light of Moshe. He was just a channel, exactly. He was just the Talmid of Moshe Rabbeinu. Yoshua never left the status of being the Talmid. So Rabbeinu says, before the true tzaddik is found in the world, it's possible to draw close to Hashem Yitbarach me'atzmo, on your own. He's answering the question, miforash. It's possible to draw close to Hashem on your own. You don't need the true tzaddik to serve Hashem as long as he's not here in the world. Meaning, after Moshe Rabbeinu passed away and this and this and this, of course you're attaching yourself to the Torah Moshe, but they didn't need physically Moshe Rabbeinu to attach himself to Hashem after he passed away. But then, a new tzaddik shebador came, by the name of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And when Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai came, by default, the second he brought down the Zohar into the world, the Zohar became a necessary component to draw close to Hashem. And without the Zohar, it is impossible to truly draw close to Hashem. Because the advice of the Zohar is so, forget all-powerful, it's all-inclusive for every Jew from the top to the bottom. That means any tzaddik to any rasha needs the Zohar to draw close to Hashem, which is why in the merit of the Zohar. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai writes, "B'hai chibura de'ihu sefer HaZohar." With this book called the Zohar, Yifkun ba min galuta, we're going to leave the galut. Because Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai could attest to the fact that everybody needs this book. So once Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was in the world, the Zohar became an all-inclusive route to draw close to Hashem. Then now there's no way you cannot draw close to Hashem without it. Then came the Ari HaKadosh, then came the Baal Shem Tov, and Rabbi נחman says now, let's see what he says. So he says, before the true tzaddik is born into the world, you can draw close to Hashem Yitbarach on your own. But now that the true tzaddik is drawn in the world, he's found in the world. It is impossible to truthfully draw close to Hashem in any single circumstance, except by means of having the merit to draw close to Him. To apply His advice. That's what it means to draw close to Him. To travel to Him, to apply to His advice, pray in His merit, etc., etc., etc. Look what he says. That's what he said here. He brings down the Yiddish. And that's where Rabbi Natan stops. He says we have a beautiful conversation about this, but it's for a different time. That's where he stops. Tov? On the Inyan Tzaddik. Now when Rabbi Natan, after Rabbeinu passed away, all the Admorim, all the people at the time, you know why they called Breslev a crazy Chassidut? Simply because Rabbi Natan refused to become the Rav of Breslev. He refused to take the mantle after Rabbi נחman. After Rabbi נחman passed away, Rabbi נחman didn't choose a successor. Normally with every single Chassidut or any single group, there's always a successor. Always. This was unique. It's the first Chassidut that never had a successor. Ever. We see this with the Baal Shem Tov also. The Baal Shem Tov had the Magid Mezrich. There was no successor after the Baal Shem Tov. The Magid Mezrich always remained the Talmid of the Baal Shem Tov. He was never his own Rav. He was never his own, let's just say, Rebbe. Because of course they were all very great tzaddikim and rabbanim. But the Magid Mezrich never became a new Chassidut. He was always the Talmid of the Baal Shem Tov. What did the Magid Mezrich do? His entire job was to spread the books of the Baal Shem Tov, the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov. All the writings we have of the Baal Shem Tov is thanks to the Magid Mezrich. We see this with Rabbi Abba and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai in the Zohar. We see this with Rabbi Chaim Vital and the Ari HaKadosh. The Ari HaKadosh was the tzaddik. Rabbi Chaim Vital was writing. He was a scribe in the hand of the Ari HaKadosh. And the Ari HaKadosh said, without you, I'm nothing. And without me, you're nothing. And Rabbi Chaim Vital, his entire job was to write the writings of the Ari HaKadosh. He spent his entire life writing all the writings of the Ari. There's many stories about Rabbi Chaim Vital, everything that he did to publish all the books. There were even some books that he was buried with, and that later, tens and tens of years later, were dug out of his grave. Otzerot Chaim, one of the books, which is one of the, essentially the shortcut manuscripts on Etz Chaim, which is the deepest book of the Ari HaKadosh, the deepest secret of the Kabbalah, probably the deepest book of Kabbalah. We're not going to talk about Tikkun Zohar and things like this. The Ari HaKadosh's deepest book is Etz Chaim. Rabbi Chaim Vital wrote a book called Otzerot Chaim, which was later rediscovered and taken out of his grave. Everything Rabbi Chaim Vital did was to illuminate the light of the tzaddik, his teacher, the Ari. And why do we see this? Because the first book Rabbi נחman gave Rabbi Natan was what? Shifrei HaArizal, the praises of the Arizal. Why? Because Rabbi נחman wanted to tell Rabbi Natan, the second he looked at him, he knew he would be his Talmid. But he said, this is how you have to be a Talmid. So he gave him the book, the praises of the Arizal, written by Rabbi Chaim Vital, to show him what it should look like to be the Talmid in the eyes of the teacher. And the great responsibility that is going to be essentially brought on your shoulders. So after Rabbeinu passed away, Rabbi Natan, they wanted to elect him the Rav, and everyone pressured him, and Rabbi Natan said no. Because if you guys understood what Rabbeinu was saying, you would never have the audacity to say that I should be the next Rav. Because Rabbi נחman said, Rabbi Natan told them, Rabbi נחman said, Gamachti ve'egmor, nitzachti v'anatzeach. I have finished, and I will finish. I have been victorious, and I will be victorious. I did win, and I will win. That's what Rabbeinu said before he passed away. So what did Rabbi Natan say? He said, if that's the case, if he said I will finish, I'm just a Talmid. My entire goal is to spread the teachings. And Rabbi Natan did this, and he was vehemently opposed for years and for years and for years by big tzaddikim, big chassidim, by people, even the chassidim, they said, Breslev is not the problem. It's the fact that you're not taking the money good after. It's the fact that you're not the successor, and that you guys have a dead Rebbe. You have a dead Rebbe. And for that reason, we were a bunch of crazies. We were a bunch of crazies. The Breslovers were crazy, they never had a thing. And Rabbeinu had all the students at the table one day, and he told them all, he said, look, when I'm alive, it's easy to be my student. But once I pass away, and Rabbi Natan is going to be doing all his avodah, let's see how easy it is for you guys to be Talmidim. He said, then I'll know who are my real students. Because when all the opposition is happening around all of Europe, and all of Ukraine, and they're telling him that what? They're telling Rabbi Natan that your chassidut is dead. It's not true, it's not emet, it's sheker. And the fact that you're not taking money good is also sheker. Let's see how many Talmidim will stick around. So, let's fast forward a little bit. Over time, tens and tens and tens of years later, there were Talmidim after Talmidim after Talmidim. And Rabbeinu writes this. He said, I'm going to make Talmidim, and my Talmidim will have Talmidim, and my Talmidim will have Talmidim. And in Tiberia, in Eretz Israel, in the late 1800s, was born a tzaddik by the name of Rebbe Israel Dov Odesser. Now, to understand the lineage, Rabbi Natan had a student by the name of Rabbi Moshe Breslover. Rabbi Moshe Breslover. Rabbi Moshe Breslover had one specialty. He was a Bal Tfilah. He was a master of prayer. Rabbi Moshe Breslover, his entire day was spent in Hitbodedut. From Motzei Shabbat, he'd leave his home, after Medarim Lekah, he'd leave his home and spend the entire week in the forest, praying to Hashem, and studying Torah, in the forest, and on Friday he'd return back home. That's Rabbi Moshe Breslover. That's the Mesirut Nefesh of Rabbi Natan's Talmid, Rabbi Moshe. One time Rabbi Natan saw a big tzaddik, a big lamdan, or let's just say a big Talmid Chacham come to Rabbi Natan, and this Talmid Chacham started bragging to Rabbi Natan about how many pages of Gemara he knew Baal Peh, how many pages of Shas. He knew 1,000 pages of Shas Baal Peh. Already one page of Shas, c'est difficile. One page. He knew 1,000 pages of Shas Baal Peh with Rashi Tosfot. Baal Peh, you know what it means? Already 2 lines of Mishnah on a Jura. 2 lines of Mishnah. This man knew 1,000 pages of Shas Baal Peh, Rashi Tosfot. So he came to Rabbi Natan, and one of his students, this guy, started speaking to Rabbi Natan. Look at this person. Look how much he knows Gemara. Rabbi Natan looked at him, and he said, "No, Moshe, bo lepo." So he said, Rabbi Moshe Breslover, "Viens, Moshe, come, Moshe." So he said, Rabbi Natan looks at this man, and he tells Rabbi Moshe, he says, "Rabbi Moshe Breslover, this man knows 1,000 pages of Shas Baal Peh." But he said, Rabbi Natan then responds to this man. He says, "You know, my Moshe, you know what he can do? He can scream 1,000 times, Ribono Shel Olam, Master of the Universe, in his embodiment." And with that, the man was silent. Because Be'emet, for Rabbi Natan, the main thing wasn't how much you knew, it was how sincere you were. So for Rabbi Moshe Breslover, with every single time Ribono Shel Olam, he was accomplishing way more than any single page of Shas that this man understood and knew by heart, because for this man, it was a source of pride. But for Rabbi Moshe Breslover, every time he screamed Ribono Shel Olam, it was a source of, let me draw close to Hashem. That's the Avodat Hashem of a Breslover. It's not about how much you know, how much you don't know. And by the way, these people were tzaddikim. They knew Gemara, they knew Halacha, they knew everything. They knew everything. If you saw Rabbeinu's understanding of Torah, Rabbi נחman said Rabbi Natan said about Rabbeinu, he had such sharpness, he would finish 4 pages of Shulchan Aruch with the big Mefarshim, the big pages of Shulchan Aruch, with the Beragola, the Taz, the Magen Avraham, and all the Mefarshim, 4 pages of Shulchan Aruch, by the time people would finish wrapping their tefillin. That's how quick Rabbeinu was studying, and how fast he was absorbing. But as a kid, Rabbeinu himself, don't think that this was just a gift. Rabbeinu himself as a kid, when he was studying Torah in Cheder, he didn't remember anything. He didn't remember anything. He used to have to pay his student, he used to have to pay his teacher, his Gemara teacher, extra gold coins that his parents gave him for snacks and candy. They used to pay him the extra gold coins that his parents gave him for candy to ask him to teach him the Gemara again. Rabbeinu used to cry every single day because he didn't understand the Mishnayot like everyone else. I'm talking about Rabbi נחman. He didn't understand anything as a kid, but he cried and cried and cried. To the point where Rabbeinu, anything that he accomplished, he did through prayer. Everything. Same way Rabbi Natan. Same way all the tzaddikim. Rabbi Natan said, the reason why I became who I was because even tying my shoelace I did not do without tefillah. Meaning the connection. I'm doing everything with Hashem. Everything with Hashem Yitbarach. That's what it means to serve Hashem. To do everything with Hashem in the up and in the down. Because these tzaddikim went through very big ups and very big downs. And now we're going to talk about the down of the Petek. Because the truth is, one of the greatest revelations in the past 100 years existed through a fall that we think is simple, but for Rebbe Israel was a very big Yerida. So to understand this, Rebbe Israel was born in the late 1800s to a family that was following the Chassidut of Karlin. Rabbi Aaron Agadol Mikarlin, who was one of the students of the Baal Shem Tov and the Magid Mezrich. There was in Tveria at that time, there were two types of Chassidut. There was the Slonim and the Karlin. Breslev at that time, everywhere across Eretz Israel and Ukraine, was opposed tremendously. Ukraine a little bit less, and Poland a little bit less, because they're already the Chassidut had grown by that point. And in Ukraine, that's where the Chassidut was. In Eretz Israel, it was a different story. The only place where the Chassidut Breslev was a little bit more accepted was in Yerushalayim. In Yerushalayim, that's when the Hasidim, there was a bigger group of Hasidei Breslev over there. Everywhere else, though, good luck. In Tveria, there was no Hasidut Breslev. Rebbe Israel, to understand the lowliness and the poverty of Rebbe Israel Dov Odesser was born in Tveria. At that time in Tveria, there were the public bathrooms, by the way, didn't have any stalls. There was no proper sewage, nothing. There was 2 holes. One for the women's section, one for the men's section. They didn't even have bathrooms in their homes, these people. They used to go to the public bathroom when they needed to go. And the entire city used to share these public bathrooms, one hole on the right, one hole on the left. And there was obviously separate for tzniut reasons, whatever. Rabbi Israel's mom, one night, decides to go to the bathroom. She's not feeling well. And what ends up happening? She's pregnant, 8-9 months. And it's not that she wasn't feeling well, that she needed to use the restroom, she needed to give birth. So her water broke by the public bathroom, and no one's there. Late at night. And she's there screaming for hours like this. No one's there helping her. No one. Il y a personne, everyone's asleep. What ends up happening? She gives birth to Rabbi Israel in the hole, with all the sewage, with all the excrement. That's how Rabbi Israel was born. What ends up happening? She was in so much pain. There was a person that heard her screaming, ran inside the woman's stall, and grabbed Rabbi Israel from the trash. That's how Rebbe Israel Dov Odesser was born. Not like the other tzaddikim. Rebbe Israel grew up in a family that barely had bread to eat. The mom was a baker. That's how they earned their parnasah. The mom was a baker. She used to sell all their bread just to have enough parnasah to get around. They barely had anything on Shabbat. They had nothing, this family. Extremely, extremely poor. Extremely poor. Rebbe Israel as a kid had nothing to eat when he went to school, when he went to yeshiva, when he went to cheder. That the Rav at the time, when he was teaching Rebbe Israel and he was teaching all the Talmidim, he used to teach them the parasha, the this, the that, and Rebbe Israel had no food, he couldn't concentrate. So Rebbe Israel, and we're going to understand the story, the Mesirut Nefesh already at the age of 4, 5, 6, Rebbe Israel was doing already. When the teacher used to ask Rebbe Israel what parasha was, he didn't know. Why? Because he couldn't concentrate, he only had breadcrumbs. That's what he had to eat when he grew up. Rebbe Israel was such a big tzaddik already since the age of 4, 5, 6 that when his mom gave him a little piece of bread for lunch, he saw an old man in the yeshiva that had nothing to eat. So he used to speak to this old man. He was 6 years old at the time, Rebbe Israel. He used to speak to this old man, and the old man was explaining to Rebbe Israel he had nothing to eat. So Rebbe Israel used to give him his bread every morning without telling anyone. The bread that his mom gave him. That's how these tzaddikim lived. Rebbe Israel Dov Odesser, since the age of 6, was fasting Mondays and Thursdays. Since the age of 6. Monday and Thursday, like the Mekubalim used to do, Monday and Thursday, days of Torah, to be able to repair his neshama. For years and years and years, he's trying to serve Hashem in this way, but he's missing something in his avodat Hashem, and it's bothering him. It's really bothering him. And he's asking Hashem, where do I go? Which guide do I have to draw me close to you? Because it doesn't seem like anything in the fasting is working. Nothing's working. He wants to draw close to Hashem, and he feels like nothing is working. Rebbe Israel, at the age of 17, or the age of 14, 15, before he meets Rabbi Israel Karduner, who was the student of Rabbi Moshe Breslev, who was the student of Rabbi Natan that we just explained. So Rabbi Natan had a student, Rabbi Moshe Breslev, who then later had a student by the name of Rabbi Israel Karduner, and Rabbi Israel Karduner was one of the biggest Hasidim at the time. one of the biggest Hasidim, the author of Kitzur Likutei Moharan, the revised Kitzur Likutei Moharan, Ishtaprut HaNefesh, Meshiva HaNefesh, he's the one who had part in writing this. Rabbi Israel Karduner. So Rabbi Israel Karduner, where does he go? He moves from Ukraine to Eretz Israel. Already Rabbi Israel Karduner, to understand the Mesirut Nefesh of what it means to serve Hashem, you need to understand who Rabbi Israel Karduner is. That's for a different story. The story of Rabbi Israel Karduner, how he got into Eretz Israel, is already, you see what it is to be a malach of Hashem. He didn't have a passport. At that time, you need to wait years to have proper documentation to get into the land of Israel. Rabbi Israel decided to board the boat with nothing. And there was a person, a big tzaddik at the time, Rabbi Israel Karduner I'm talking about, to go to Eretz Israel in the late 1800s. To go to Eretz Israel, he's like this. Late 1800s, he's traveling without documentation. There was a big tzaddik at the time who waited 3 years for his documentation. Rabbi Israel Karduner looks at him, and the man, they're speaking like this, and the man asked Rabbi Israel Karduner, so how long did it take you to get your paper? He said, what papers? He says, what do you mean what papers? I waited 3 years for my papers. Rabbi Israel Karduner says, Tov. Rabbi נחman asked us to go to Eretz Israel. If it means I step 4 amot when I get there and they ask me for my documentation and get sent back, at least it was worth it. But he said, I have emunah. And the other man, when they arrive in Haifa, on the port in Haifa, what ends up happening? The other man with Rabbi Israel Karduner gets in line. They ask the border control asked this Rav, this tzaddik, where are your papers? He shows them the papers. They give him a problem, not the right documentation. He gets sent back. They ask Rabbi Israel Karduner, where are your papers? He says, does the man travel without a passport? He says, Tov. They let him go. That's the emunah of tzaddik. Rabbi Israel Karduner. Rabbi Israel Karduner, that's his entire life, by the way. He spent 7 years with Rabbi Moshe Brasavel understanding the secrets of Hitbodedut and Tefillah and Torah. Studying with Rabbi Moshe Israel, the main student of Rabbi Natan, one of the main students of Rabbi Natan, 7 years like this. Rabbi Moshe Brasavel, or one of the big tzaddikim at the time, Rabbi נחman of Cherin, who was the main student of Rabbi Natan, who wrote the first commentaries on Likutei Moharan. The first commentary on Likutei Moharan is by Rabbi נחman of Cherin, the Cheriner. This tzaddik saw Rabbi Israel Karduner for the first time. Rabbi Israel Karduner, already how he drew close to Rabbi נחman is already a miracle. Rabbi Israel Karduner saw Tikkun HaKali in his father's wine cellar. His father was importing and exporting wine. He went to the bottom. He was helping his father with work. He found a Tikkun HaKali at the bottom. Tikkun HaKali. And in the Tikkun HaKali, it speaks about Rabbi Nachman's promise at the beginning. How Rabbi Nachman gathered 2 edim, 2 witnesses, to say that anyone who comes to my kever to give a pruta of tzedakah, to recite the Tikkun HaKali, I will make sure to go to the length and breadth of creation to save this man, to even pull him out of Sheol Tachtiyot. He reads this, he says, whoa, who's this Rabbi Nachman? I need to go meet him. So who did he go? Where did he go? He goes to Breslau. Because he says Rabbi Nachman of Breslau. You know what Breslau is? Germany. Where all the Mitnagdim are. He went to the wrong place. And this is after his father kicked him out of his house because he wanted to go study Torah. His father said, work with me and then I'll let you go to yeshiva. He said no. His father said, I disown you. He left everything. He went to Breslau, Germany. And over there the Mitnagdim didn't have any rachamim on him. The people who opposed Hasidut didn't have any rachamim on him. They sent him where? There was one person who was a little bit kind. He said, you're looking for the wrong thing. You're looking for Ukraine. And not only that, you're looking for Breslev. Says he takes the train with nothing, no money, rien. He gets there, and who did he find? He finds all the tzaddikim in Breslev, the Hasidei Breslev. So he says he's going to go meet Rabbi Nachman. To his disbelief, Rabbi Nachman already passed away years ago. So who did he come across? The main student of Rabbi Natan, Rabbi Nachman of Cherin. Rabbi Natan already passed away at this point. So who did he find? Rabbi Nachman of Cherin. Rabbi Nachman of Cherin looks at him, and for 7 days, Rabbi Nachman of Cherin, between the time he met him to 7 days later, was crying in his room because of the fact that Hashem revealed to him that the person to lead Rabbi Israel Karduner in the path of Breslev was not him, it was Rabbi Moshe Brasavel. So Rabbi Nachman of Cherin, look at the anava. He sent Rabbi Israel Karduner and he said, first you go to Uman to recite the Tikkun HaKali on the kever, and then you go study with Rabbi Moshe Brasavel. He gets to Uman. Rabbi Nachman of Cherin, and one of the Chadarim at the time, Rabbi Avram Berav Nachman, a very big tzaddik, looks at Rabbi Israel Karduner and says, you need to get married.
At this time, Rabbi Israel Dov didn't know anything about.
No, he just did a tikkun haklali. He started crying on the kever doing tikkun haklali. He was in so much orot, so much light. The students, Rabbi נחman said, "Oh, relax, relax." He said, "No, we do Avodat Hashem. Not in 1 second you just put everything in. You have to calm down on Avodat Hashem." So he said, "Tov, you want to calm down? You get married." Rabbi Avraham נחman sent him a shidur. They got married. Rabbi Moshe Breslauer takes Rabbi Israel Dov and for 7 years engage in Avodat Hashem. Rabbi Israel Dov goes to Eretz Israel, gets to Eretz Israel, and Rabbi Israel Dov was sick at the time. He had some money, but he was sick. So where did he go? Tiberia. Why? Because Tiberia, there was the Chamet Tiberia, there was the hot springs. And it was known at the time for refuah, for healings. Rabbi Israel Dov was, his main post was at Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. He had the key to Rabbi Shimon. At that time, Meron was half Arab, half Jews. The top was where the Jews used to go in. They used to have a key. There was no people praying in Meron. There was a couple people. Rabbi Israel Dov had the key. But when he was very sick, he went down to Tiberia. And who did he find in Tiberia? He finds Rabbi Israel's mom. Rabbi Israel Dov Odesser's mom. Why? Because Rabbi Israel Dov Odesser's mom was a baker. So he wanted to go buy bread. And Rabbi Israel Dov didn't eat anything except for bread and tea. Nothing else. Nothing. No food, nothing. No meat, nothing. Bread and tea. So he gets to the house of Rabbi Israel Dov Odesser, his mom. Rabbi Israel Dov Odesser sees a Breslauer Chassid. And Rabbi Israel Dov Odesser had already been introduced. How was he introduced to Breslauer Chassidut? He found the book in the trash can a couple years before. Which book? Hishtabchut HaNefesh. Hishtabchut HaNefesh, outpouring of the soul. What is outpouring of the soul? What is this book? This is the book that speaks about Hitbodedut and Tfilah. And Rabbi Israel looked in the trash. He didn't see any cover. He just saw the words Hishtabchut HaNefesh, outpouring of the soul. And he said, "This is what I need. I've been looking for something like this." He starts reading it, and it starts penetrating his heart. And he reads and he memorizes the book once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. And he was in Tiberia by the yeshiva of Rabbi Meir Balanes, so he used to do Bodedut in the forest surrounding the kever of Rabbi Meir. Until his friend, Rabbi Israel Dov Odesser's friend, comes to him and says, "You can't have that book. It's a book of Breslauer." Takes the book, steals it from Rabbi Israel, but at that point, Rabbi Israel had already been introduced. The work had been done. So you went around collecting, going to Yerushalayim, collecting Sfarim. At this point, Rabbi Israel Dov comes to the house of Rabbi Israel Dov Odesser's parents. And Rabbi Israel Dov Odesser was already introduced to Rabbeinu. And he had been praying to Hashem that Hashem send him a teacher to guide him in these teachings. Who ends up at his house? The lineage of Rabbi Natan, Rabbi Israel Dov. And he goes to Rabbi Israel Dov and he looks at him and he says, with chutzpah, "You came all the way here for me." He whispers in his ears. "You came all the way here for me." Rabbi Israel Dov says, "Tov." He says, "You want to know what it means to be a Breslauer Chassid? We wake up Chatzot." So they went out at midnight. At that time, Tiberia was flooding, and all the yeshivot, they used to clear out the books because they didn't have proper, drainage. Like draining and stuff like that, the water, they didn't have proper whatever. So half of the yeshivot and the Petek Nesiot on the lower levels of Tiberia were flooded with water. And they were open because no one was studying there. So Rabbi Israel Dov and Rabbi Israel Dov Odesser, they didn't have keys to other shuls. So they walked into the shul with water. And at knee level, the water is there. And they climb up onto a table and they study Likutei Moharan lesson 7 of book 2. The entire night. And Rabbi Israel Dov Odesser said, "The taste I had of studying with Rabbi Israel Dov this night, I never lost. I never lost this taste." They studied the entire night. And what ends up happening? By the morning, Rabbi Israel Dov Odesser's mom wakes up and starts screaming, "Where is Rabbi Israel? Where is Rabbi Israel? Where is Rabbi Israel?" And she starts crying and crying to the point, passed away. She couldn't find her son. She passed away. Rabbi Israel Dov separates. Rabbi Israel Dov Odesser goes home, and who did he find? He finds a bunch of doctors, a bunch of people, the entire city crowding around his house because his mom passed away. And as he sees his mom on the floor, he goes to Hashem and he says, "It's not possible. You can't draw me close to you and to cause a chilul Hashem because I was up chatzot and now my mom passes away. You cannot do this." After she had already been pronounced dead by the doctors, miracle, she gets up. Miracle. Nes. And the story goes on for 5 years. Rebbe Israel Dov Odesser is with Rebbe Israel Dov for 5 years, understanding the secrets and the avodat Hashem of what it means to be a Breslev Chassid. Going through the Torah of Rabbeinu and Rabbi Natan, Likut Halachot, Likut Moran, Likut Tfilot, everything. He believed to understand what it means to serve Hashem for 5 years, until Rebbe Israel Dov passes away in 1918. In 1918, he passes away. And what ends up happening, Rebbe Israel Dov Odesser is left alone. The only Chassid Breslev in Tiberia. And at that time, he was paid 1/10 of the salary as any other Bachur in yeshiva, the yeshiva of Rabbi Meir Ben Anas. Why? Because Rabbi Israel Kaduna used to do one thing the entire day. Ligot Tfilot and Teilim. And because the Rosh Yeshiva looked at him and said, I don't pay my Bachurei Yeshiva, I don't pay my students to read Likud Tfilot, which is already pasul in my eyes, and Teilim. I pay them to study Gemara. Rabbi Israel looked at him and said, my neshama stinks. How do you expect me to study Torah when I haven't repaired my soul? How do you expect me to study Torah l'shem shamayim and to add more filth on filth when I haven't repaired my soul? I haven't broken my desire. He says to the Rosh Yeshiva, he says, let me pray, let me read Tehillim to break my desire so that when I study Torah, it's l'shem shamayim. And obviously he was studying, but he's saying, I need to repair my soul. That's why I read Likutei Tefillot. That's why I read Tehillim. Because if I just study without praying, what's it worth? The Rosh Yeshiva said, I don't care. He said, the only thing I can do for you out of Rachamim, because you're so poor, is to give you 2 rendals, which is the currency at the time, instead of 20. Rabbi Israel said, tough. And Rabbi Israel was already married at the time. His son passed away because he didn't have food. No food in his house. His son passed away because of starvation, because of the fact that he was a Chassid Breslev. For years and for years and for years, he's going through this avodat Hashem until one day comes, I think it's around 1922, Rebbe Israel Dov Odesser gets up Chatzot. It's Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, the 17th of Tammuz, the famous day of the fast. He gets up at Chatzot, and that's obviously what they used to do. They used to get up at midnight. They used to go to bed early, get up at midnight, and serve Hashem the entire night. Gets up at midnight. Doesn't feel well. He's not feeling well. He knows it's the fast, but he's not feeling well. And he's waiting, and he's waiting, and he's waiting. He's doing what Hashem is trying to do, but it's not working. He really wasn't feeling well. So he says, Hashem Yitbarach, I have nothing. I have a few crumbs of bread that were disgusting already. He says, not to enjoy the pleasure of food. I'm going to eat these crumbs of bread because what else can I do? I'm really not feeling well. Already the Breslev Hasidim, just so you guys know, do not eat from the second they wake up Chatzot till after Tefillah. In the winter, that means they wake up at 11 p.m. and they don't eat till 6 a.m., 7 a.m., till after Tefillah. That's what they used to do. That's the fast the Breslev do every single day. When they get up Chatzot, they don't eat until after Tefillah. They don't even drink water. So Rabbi Israel already since the age of 6 was fasting Monday, Thursday, and was already going through the avodat Hashem with Rabbi Israel Kaduna. He says, how can I be eating? He eats, he does Birkat Hamazon, doesn't feel well, he did Tefillah. He says, you can imagine the shacharit I did after I broke the fast. He had been completely discouraged. Rebbe Israel Dov Odesser falls into a depression. One day, falls into a depression. He says, I can't do this anymore. He felt as if he wanted to bury himself. That's the way he felt. For Rebbe Israel, breaking the fast was one of the biggest sin. It was probably the biggest sin he had ever done. For us, we think that's, we eat breadcrumbs before the fast. Before the fast starts. We eat breadcrumbs before the fast starts, we think we're tzaddikim. Rebbe Israel Dov Odesser was doing this. He had fallen to such a depression. After day 1, he said, I can't be here. He walked out. For 5 days, 6 days, he goes to the forest to do it. He's falling every single day into a word depression, doing nothing, can't even serve Hashem. He's heavy. On the 6th day when he's back in the yeshiva and everything, nobody knows what happened. Rebbe Israel Dov Odesser has a thought in his head. It says, the thought in his head was telling him once, go to your bookcase and open up a sefer. And in the sefer you have a remedy, you have a refuah. Rebbe Israel Dov Odesser throws the thought away. Again the thought comes. throws it away. Again, the thought comes. He says, "Tov, if it's happening to me 1,000 times, they might as well open up the bookcase." He opens up the lock, and why the lock? Because at that time, a likutei moran was pasul. A table that had a likutei moran on it would be thrown away. The table. Rebbe Israel Kaduna locked up his books because anyone who were to see him having those books would throw them out. So he locked it up with a key that only he had. He opened up the bookcase. He opens up Likutei Halachot Orach Chaim Chelek Aleph, page 25. A note slips out, doesn't pay attention. He thinks it's a bookmark, and he starts reading. And he starts reading, and it's helping him and helping him. When the second he closes the book, he says, nothing's effective. As he's about to put the bookcase back in the book back in the bookcase, he goes to pick up the bookmark that he had forgotten to put back in the book, and he goes to pick it up, and the first thing he notices are the words Talmidi Hayakar, my precious student. And he says, weird. I've never seen a bookmark written with writing on it, especially Talmidi Hayakar. And he starts reading through it. And what did he see? A note. And this is what the note says. מאוד היה קשה לי לרדת אליך תלמידי היקר. Behold, it was very difficult to descend down to you, my precious student. להגיד לך, to tell you, כי נהניתי מאוד מעבודתך, that I benefited greatly from your עבודת השם. ועליך אמרתי, and upon you I said, mein Feuer wird leben, bis Mashiach wird kommen, in Yiddish. My fire, האש שלי תוקע עד ביאת המשיח. My fire will burn until the Mashiach comes. ובזה אגלה לך סוד. Oh no, what did he say? ועליך אמרתי my fire ותליים במשיח ותקומן, חזק ואמץ בעבודתך. Stay strong and courageous in your עבודת השם. נחמן מאומן. He signs, Rabbi נחman signs his name. ובזה אגלה לך סוד, and with this I will reveal to you a secret. שהוא מלא וגדיש מקו לקו, which is filled and heaped up to the brim from extremity to extremity. Petzadi Yudke, the name of the angels that blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah. Those are the names of the angels. Petzadi Yudke are the deputies that blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah. By the way, these are all deep secrets. In Likutei Moran, Rabbi נחman reveals that the shofar, the angels that blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah, are required to dig after the lost items of Am Yisrael. Which lost items? The Pagam Abrit. When a person falls into Pagam Abrit, blemishing the covenant, he loses nitzotzot, he loses neshamot. The angels that blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah in Shamayim, those angels that blow the shofar, not only do they blow the shofar, they dig. They dig. What do they dig for? The lost items of the Israel. Those angels that are mentioned in the Petek. That's an entire Torah, Pechet of Likutei Moran Tinyana, where Rabbi נחman over there describes the secrets of Tikkun Abrit, the secrets of not eating a fruit before it's ripe. Because if you eat a fruit before it's ripe, you lose your neshama. And how that has to do with Tikkun Abrit. Entire secret over there. And how the angels who blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah are required to dig. What? After your lost items. So an entire thing. That's a little bit on the Inyan of Petzadi Yudke. For those, you remember Aaron Patz? Quand il était là, le copain de Sylvain. Aaron Patz. Yes. Rabbi Israel il a dit sur Aaron Patz. Rabbi Israel said about Aaron Patz, who is the shamash of Rabbi Israel, that the second Petzadi in the Petzadi Yudke was referencing Aaron Patz.
Wow.
Who is Aaron Patz? Aaron Patz was the shamash of Rabbi Israel, was one of the assistants of Rabbi Israel who used to. Yeah. Rabbi Israel was the first person to reveal the Petek publicly. Was Aaron Patz? He's the one who told Aaron Patz.
Wheelchair.
Il was always with Sylvain, comme ça.
Il était à la fin de sa vie, il était en wheelchair.
Exactement. Aaron Patz passed away on the plane on the way to Oman.
Wow.
Voilà. Aaron Patz. I don't know if it was for Rosh Hashanah, but I know it was on the plane on the way.
Yeah, I remember him.
Oh, no. I'll show you after. Aaron Patz, very big tzaddik. He was the shamash of Rabbi Israel. Rabbi Israel said about Petzadi Yudke, the name of the angels that blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah, in the Petek, that the second Petzadi, there's Petzadi, the first Petzadi referencing what? Hafatza. To spread the books. Of Rabbi נחman, to spread the books. To print the books. The second Petzadi was Aaron Patz, because Aaron Patz had a special portion revealing the Petek. We're going to explain it right now. So after Rabbi נחman says, with great avodat Hashem, with strong avodat Hashem, you'll understand this note. The siman and the sign that this note is true, Yud Zayin B'Tammuz Yomru She'encha Miteneh. On the 17th of Tammuz, they're going to say, the entire world's going to say you didn't fast. That's the note of the Petek. After Rabbi Israel received the Petek, he started dancing and dancing and dancing. His entire depression turned into simcha. How from the fall of Shiva B'Sar B'Tammuz transformed the entire thing. Rabbi Israel starts dancing and dancing. People start hearing him in his room. They start going crazy. They're saying, the Breseder that was happy, then becomes sad, and now he's happy again. What's going on? So all his friends go from the yeshiva, go start making fun of him. They start surrounding him and joking around him as if what he's doing is fun. So a crew gathers around Rabbi Israel, and there were so many people that wanted to go, there wasn't enough room. So they dragged him outside, and Rabbi Israel is dancing for hours on end. For hours on end, nobody understanding why. And people are making fun of him until they got tired, and Rabbi Israel danced the entire night. When Rabbi Israel in the morning goes, he sees the Petek. Rabbi Israel didn't reveal it publicly. He waited 60 years to reveal it publicly. 60 years. He showed it to the Rosh Yeshiva. The Rosh Yeshiva started laughing. He said, you think this is from Rabbi נחman? This note? You think this is a note from the Shammai? He says, I'm gonna go to all the Bachurei Yeshiva and ask them. He went through everyone. No one understood a thing. No one knew anything about it. No one, klum, nothing. Rebbe Israel Dov Odesser goes to Rabbi Mordechai Sonim, who was a person that didn't like him. He was a mitnaged. Mordechai Sonim, a different chassidut. But he liked Rabbi Israel because he saw how sincere Rabbi Israel was in his avodat Hashem. Rabbi Mordechai Sonim started laughing. He was the Abedin of Tiberia.
It's a big lack of emunah after all. From this giant.
It's different.
No,
you're for sure. But it's so difficult already because of the fact that you oppose Bresav. On top of that, to say I now got a note from Rabbi נחman over 100 years after he passed away. Big machloket. Rabbi Israel goes to Rabbi Mordechai Sonim. He looks at him and he says, "Tov, tell me what you think of this." Rabbi Mordechai Sonim starts laughing. He starts interrogating everyone in Tiberia. He couldn't find anyone. At that point, Rabbi Mordechai Sonim completely stopped the machloket against Bresav entirely. He stopped the machloket entirely. He said it must be a met. This note. It must be a met. He stopped the machloket. His students didn't stop the machloket. His students, Rabbi Mordechai Sonim, did not stop the machloket. He stopped the machloket. His students didn't stop. They continued going again. For years, Rebbe Israel Dov Odesser kept this a secret. The only people that knew were his family. 60 years he keeps it hidden. He only showed a few Chassidei Bresav. He sent it to Poland, the Petek. He sent the Petek to Poland to who? Rabbi Yitzchak Breiter. Rabbi Yitzchak Breiter was the main Chassid of Bresav in Poland at the time. He was actually the one who was essentially the leader of the group at the time over there. Rabbi Yitzchak Breiter is one of the... He wrote many books, The Day in the Life of the Bresav Chassid, The 7 Pillars of Emunah. Rabbi Yitzchak Breiter was one of the biggest tzaddikim at the time. One of the leaders of Chassidut Bresav. He sent it to him. Rabbi Yitzchak sent it to him to ask him what he thought of it. Rabbi Yitzchak Breiter sent it back to him already, which was a chidush, because if Rabbi Yitzchak Breiter thought that Rabbi Nachman's name was going to be being desecrated, he would have burnt the note. He sent it back, and you know what he said? This is too big for me. Rabbi Israel Dov Odesser showed it to Rabbi Shlomo Wexler, Rabbi Shmuel Shapira, and all the big Hasidim at the time. They accepted it. Rabbi Shmuel Horowitz, one of the biggest Hasidim of the time, they all accepted the Petek. There was a few that didn't, but the biggest Bresaver Hasidim at the time accepted the Petek. They said, we've never seen anything like this. There were tzaddikim that said already on the first letter of the Nun of נחman, we can write already books of Kabbalah just on the first letter. There's many secrets to the Petek. We're not going to get into it. That's an entire class on its own. The truth is, we need simple emunah.
Didn't Rabbi Moshe Feinstein also say it?
Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, Rabbi Israel Dov Odesser went to New York. He wanted to meet with President Reagan. That's why he came to the U.S. He wanted to meet with Reagan to do Hafatza.
Really?
Yeah. He wanted to gather funds to go to the President of the U.S. to gather funds to print the books of Rabbi נחman.
Rabbi Israel Dov Odesser.
Rabbi Israel Dov Odesser, at the age of 100, came to the U.S. He came to L.A., Rabbi Israel Dov Odesser. Rabbi Israel Dov Odesser was in L.A.
Wow.
Rabbi Israel Dov Odesser came to L.A. He was in L.A. I know people that were here that were with him in L.A.
How many years ago?
years. This was...
Like 30, 40?
Rabbi Israel went to France twice.
Yeah.
He came to the US, he went to New York, he went to LA.
Did he go to France first?
Yes, he went to France twice, and 10-year periods.
Why was he so into France?
We're going to understand... Okay, so we get into the...
There's a big thing with, with France in general.
So Rav Moshe Feinstein, who was the big posek at the time, the Ashkenazi posek of New York, he saw Rabbi Israel, he met with Rabbi Israel. Rabbi Israel was in New York, so he said, I might as well meet with him. They met together. Rabbi Israel showed him the note. And Rav Moshe Feinstein, after leaving, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein is not a chassid. He's a litvak, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein. He's a bar halacha. After the meeting with Rabbi Israel, he comes out of the meeting, he writes an approbation, haskama. He says, I just met with a gaon and a tzaddik muflag in Torah. A gaon, a genius, and a tzaddik in Torah and Kabbalah. Rebbe Israel Dov Odesser, when you see him speak on YouTube, you don't get this idea. When you speak with Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, it's a totally different conversation. So Rabbi Moshe Feinstein said, I met with a gaon and tzaddik in Kabbalah, and in all the Torah, and he showed me a wondrous note. Anyone who helps Rabbi Israel print the books of Rabbi נחman and do afatza has a very big merit in this world and the world to come. Rabbi Moshe Feinstein. Haskama of Rabbi Moshe Feinstein.
It's printed on the front of every Breslov book.
The Haskama of Rabbi Moshe Feinstein. On the Petek. And there's many stories. Many stories about the Petek. But when Rabbi Israel wanted to reveal the Petek, you know when it was? Rabbi Israel had no money. All the money he had collected was towards printing the books. He had gathered a sum of funds towards the end of his life. It was a couple million shekel. Towards the end of his life, they had gathered in his will. He said not a single dollar goes to anyone except to build the Keren Rabbi Israel, except to build the printing press. The printing press that would print the books of Rabbi נחman, essentially for the cheapest price, and spread them as much as possible. Every dollar that Rabbi Israel had was towards this. One day, Natan Uzon, we know Natan Uzon, we listened to his classes, his father was with Rabbi Israel. And his father was training Rabbi Israel, and he saw Rabbi Israel's socks were ripped. He said, Rabbi Israel, what is this? You can't buy yourself new socks? He says, Dov, what do I need new socks for? Could be used to print another book. Rebbe Israel Dov Odesser spent every single aspect of his life towards hafatza, spreading the light. That's it. Spreading the books. Because he said one thing. You want to understand Breslov? It's one thing. If I had the merit, I should give someone else the merit too. Don't be selfish with your Torah. If you have the merit, give someone else the merit too, to be introduced to these ideas. So Rebbe Israel Dov Odesser, when it was time to reveal the Petek, he was in a wheelchair already. He was in a retreat in Ranana. He was in a retreat, he was in an old age home in Ranana. He had no money, nothing. Nobody knew who Rebbe Israel was. Who ends up going to the old age home? Aaron Patz. Aaron Patz sees Rebbe Israel Dov Odesser. He looks at him and he says, this man is something. Aaron Patz says, Rebbe Israel. He starts speaking to him. Aaron Patz, etc., starts speaking to Rebbe Israel, this. Rebbe Israel says, take me to the mikveh. Rebbe Israel hadn't been to the mikveh in a long time. Rebbe Israel brought to the mikveh by Aaron Patz. Rebbe Israel goes to the mikveh, and after the mikveh, he says, now it's the time to reveal the Petek. And he spent the rest of his life spreading the Petek. And what's the inyan of the Petek? It's one inyan. There's no such thing as despair. That's what it is. There's no such thing as Yerush. And to understand what it means that there's no such thing as Yerush, you need to understand how Rabbi נחman brought this concept to the world. Because the truth is, Rabbi נחman is coming to teach us something. No matter how low you go, or no matter how high you are, no matter what, Rabbi נחman is saying, my Torah has the ability to create tzaddikim. Whether you're here, or whether you're here, I have the ability to make you a righteous individual. My advice has the ability to change you. That's Rabbi Nachman's Torah. From the highest, mikatan b'ma'ala, from the mi'apachut sheba'pchutim, from the lowest to the low, to the highest of the high. Rabbi Natan writes in all the introductions, Rabbi Nachman's advice is universal. Because when a person is very, very big in Torah and Avodat Hashem and is a Talmid Chacham, you understand how deep Rabbi Nachman's writing are. And when he's a plastic, he doesn't know anything, you understand how Rabbi Nachman's words in simplicity are super infinitely deep. and can change it. Rabbi נחman, 2 months before he passed away, Shabbat Shuvah, the Shabbat after Tisha B'Av, Rabbi נחman is extremely sick. They say about him at that time that it felt as if he was about to pass away. He was literally on his last breath. Rabbi נחman is extremely sick with tuberculosis. He's coughing up blood and blood every single day. And what ends up happening, it's Erev Shabbat, it's Friday. And Rabbi Natan brings all the Talmidim to Rabbi נחman for Shabbat. Shabbat Shuvah. They bring all the Talmidim to Rabbi נחman. They pray in the Beit Knesset and they go to Rabbi Nachman's house. And where do they find Rabbeinu? Rabbeinu opened up the door and Rabbi נחman is not happy at all. He has a dark face. He's not in a good mood. Rabbi נחman brings everyone to the table, which already they came basically uninvited. And Rabbi Natan now feels bad because he looks at Rabbeinu and he sees Rabbeinu's face and Rabbeinu's not in a happy mood. And Rabbi Natan brings everyone, all these people to the table, and now Rabbi נחman looks at him with not the best face and Rabbi Natan is not feeling great. They sit at the table, and Rabbi נחman, it's a known thing, he'd bring down the Chaim Moran, that when Rabbi נחman used to do Kiddush, he used to spend sometimes hours, before even uttering the first word of Kiddush, just sighing. Because Rabbi נחman said, as I'm about to recite the Kiddush, Yom HaShishi, it's as if my soul's about to leave my body. The same power that I have whenever I'm about to reveal the Torah. Rabbi נחman says, the same feeling I have when I'm about to reveal the first letter of a Torah, a lesson, is the same feeling I have when I'm about to do Kiddush. Rabbi נחman used to sigh. This time, he seats everyone at the table. He goes, Yom HaShishi, no. He finishes the Kiddush. That already, and he sits everyone down. Rabbi נחman did everything opposite. He's not happy. Rabbi נחman doesn't recite the Kiddush in 3 hours, he recites it in 3 minutes. And aside from that, he sits everyone down instead of going to make everyone do Netilat Yadayim. And he sits everyone down and look what he says. Ma atem nosim etzli. He brings down Tzichot Aran, number 153. Why are you guys coming here to me? Halo ani eni yodea ta klal. Right now, I know nothing at all. I know nothing at all. Rabbi נחman has a chidush where he says, my knowing nothing, which literally, by the way, means knowing nothing. We think knowing nothing, meaning knowing this, knowing that, knowing aleph, bet. No. When Rabbi נחman saying, I know nothing at all, Rabbi נחman writes it before Chaim Moran. When I say I know nothing at all, the few times I've said it, it's because my chokhmah was completely taken away. I had nothing left. Not even aleph, bet. By the way, the story of the Baal Shem Tov on the way to Eretz Israel, the Baal Shem Tov forgot the aleph, bet too. Rabbi נחman said, me knowing nothing is even greater than me revealing Torah. It's in even a higher madriga, a higher level. And Rabbi נחman right now is in the darkest place of his life. He's extremely sick. He lost his wife. He lost his son. He lost multiple sons. He lost a daughter. He lost this. He lost that. He's taking suffering for the Jewish people upon himself every single day. He's suffering with blood. He's suffering with this. He has to repair tens of thousands of souls every single day. Imagine the weight that is on this individual. And Rabbi נחman is saying, why are you guys coming here tonight on Shabbat? כשאני אומר תורה, when I reveal a Torah, יש לכם על מה לנסוע ולבוא אליי. You have a reason to come to me if I'm going to give a lesson. But I didn't even tell you guys I'm going to reveal something. Why are you guys here? אבל אתה, על מה באתם? What did you guys come for? הלא אני איני יודע כלל. אני אתה יודע כלל. כי אני אתה רק פרסטיק לגמרי. I'm a total עם הארץ. I'm a simple man. I'm an ignoramus. I know nothing. Why are you guys here? And Rabbi נחman starts going along this line. Until Rabbi נחman starts to find a nekudat tova within himself. Until he starts to find a good point within himself. And what did he say? He's bringing himself back to life. Rabbi נחman saying, the only vitality I have is the fact that I took the journey to Eretz Israel. And my footsteps on the way to Eretz Israel is the only way I receive vitality. And Rabbi נחman starts going on a conversation that the only thing I have for me going is the fact that I went to Eretz Israel. Is the derech on the way to Eretz Israel, which is derech Eretz, which is a very big sod, Rabbi נחman explained. Derech Eretz, the derech to the land. And he starts going and going and going. And Rabbi נחman, העריך בשיחה זאת שבאמת לאמיתו אינו יודע כלל לא ושהוא רק פרסטיק לגמרי, רק שהוא מחיה את עצמו במה שהיה בארץ ישראל. Rabbi נחman continues explaining that he knows nothing, and the only way he's bringing himself to life and vitality, the only reason why he's alive is because he went to Eretz Israel. And the journey on the way to Eretz Israel. That he brings himself to life with the footsteps that he took to Eretz Israel. And from within the conversation, from within the pshitut, that Rabbi נחman says, the simplicity that I'm taking right now, the simplicity that I'm in, that the only thing that's bringing me life is the journey to Eretz Israel. From within this conversation, that Rabbi נחman is explaining this entire sod that's written in lesson 78 of the second volume of Likutei Moharan. Rabbi נחman then begins explaining. He begins explaining an entire Torah. He begins explaining the secret as to how the journey to Eretz Israel brings life to all the simple individuals across the world. And how sometimes the very big tzaddik, the true tzaddik, needs to descend down into total simplicity, not to know anything, to bring life to those who have no life. Who are those people? Those people that aren't engaged in Torah, that go to work. All of us. The tzaddik needs to fall into total simplicity to bring life to all the simple people. It's what we call the ish pashut hagadol, this great simple man, who's going to take care of all the simple people. You know why? Because what do we say about the Torah? Ki hu chayecha ve'orach yamecha. Do we say about the Torah is the life, your life, and the length of your days. If you're not engaged in Torah, how do you have life? So Rabbi נחman says, you want to know the answer? Where does a person receive his life from when he's not engaged in the Torah? From the person, the tzaddik, the big tzaddik, who makes himself simple. Right now. So Rabbi נחman begins to explain this entire secret about how to sanctify the land of Israel, and how when any Jew goes even outside Chutz La'aretz, he creates an apartment, he builds a house, he creates a business, he goes to LA, he goes to France, he goes to this, he goes to that. He creates Eretz Israel within that place. Because you're conquering the land wherever you go. And he begins explaining all these secrets and how the simple individual falls into simplicity. And from within this thing, Rabbi נחman was so weak. He begins explaining the entire Torah. He starts singing with such simcha, Azamer Bishvachim, the song that we sing on Friday night, before Netilat Yadayim, instead of doing it after. And he starts singing, and he tells everyone to start singing, and he himself was singing. And there was so much simcha that Rabbi נחman began singing with us, Rabbi Natan said. And afterwards, Rabbi נחman began speaking with us with great joy and with great grace. And Rabbi נחman sat the entire Seudah with such joy. And he started reinforcing us. And comes a point where Rabbi נחman does Aliyat Neshama. He goes up. His soul leaves. And Rabbi Natan looks at him and he says, what's going on? And he looks at Rabbi Shimon, his attendant, and Rabbi Shimon says, no, leave him here. And Rabbi נחman, after a certain amount of period of time, screams like this. En shum yeush barakah. There's no such thing as despair in the world at all. And Rabbi נחman, look at how Rabbi Natan describes it in Likutei Moharan. Va'amaram bechoar gadol u'v'amkud nifla v'nora me'od. He said it with such strength and with great depth, and it was super profound. Kedei leorot ulramez lechol echad ve'echad ledorot. To tell everyone, not in this generation, ledorot, for future generation. That's why Rabbi נחman screamed it. Not he didn't whisper it. He screamed it to teach to the furthest people, to the people that are far away, that can't hear. That what? En shum yeush barakah. There's no such thing as giving up at all. There's no such thing as despair. Va'afilu ish pashut, gam ken tzarich. What did he say? He continues like this. Shelo yityayesh b'shum ofen ba'olam. Not to give up at all in the world. Afilu miyavor alav ma, no matter what happens to you, no matter what sins you do, no matter what this or that, there's no such thing as despair. No matter what happens, even if you fall to the lowest place imaginable, may God spare us from such things. No matter the problem though, as long as you reinforce yourself, no matter the situation, you still have hope to return to Hashem. That's the Petek. To teach Rebbe Israel, being that Rebbe Israel encountered the lowest fall. And for him, by the way, when Chas v'Shalom, a person does the worst sin, for Rebbe Israel, that was worse than any of the sins we do. Because Rebbe Israel had such dat. For him, when he falls to that place, he's committing murder, he's committing things like this in his mind. The more dat you have, the harder the fall. For Rebbe Israel, that was an immense fall. But what was Rabbeinu teaching? Chazak ve'ematz ba'avodatcha. נחמן, מאומן. Reinforce yourself onto the name of the tzaddik. Rabbi נחman says just reciting Shmot HaTzaddikim can change Teva, can create a chidush in Maaseh Bereshit. You have emunah in the creation of the world. Rabbi נחman says it already purifies your machshava. There's so many things that he brings down that just reciting the names of tzaddikim gives you kedusha and helps you in your avodat Hashem. There's a seder Rebbe Israel does every single day to recite Shmot HaTzaddikim, the book Rabbi Natan wrote. Rabbi Natan wrote a book of all the tzaddikim. Of course, there was a few missing and this and that in the later generations, of course. But all the tzaddikim from the time of Adam up until his generation, just to read their names. Because when you recite the name of a tzaddik, you draw on their strength and their maasim tovim. Rabbi Israel said, Rabbi נחman wrote his signature on the Petek. נחman, Meoman. Just saying that phrase in itself gives you a koach that you draw from Rabbeinu himself. Rabbeinu said, En shum yeosh ba'alam kal. So when Rabbi Israel went on television, you can look at this video on YouTube. He's on television with a bunch of Tamidim. And they're singing a song before he gets on television and explaining the Petek. He has the Petek in front of him. And the man asks him, so he says, what's the inyan of the Petek? And he says, Rabbi and Tamidim. The relationship between the Rabbi and his students. That no matter how low they fall, the Rabbi is always reinforcing them. No matter how low. Because just by saying the name נחman, just by saying the phrase נחman, you are drawing on the koch, the tzaddik, to reinforce you from the darkest place. So when Rabbi Natan finished this lesson because of Shabbat Shuvah, he couldn't write down, and Rabbi Natan wrote down all the Torah. After Rabbi Natan wrote down the Torah, on Sunday, the following day, he brought it to Rabbeinu. And Rabbeinu was sitting in his chair. He was so weak. He gave the paper to Rabbeinu, and Rabbeinu, he was so weak he couldn't hold on to the paper. It slipped out of the window. Rabbi Natan walks out. He walks out, he picks up the paper and hands it to Rabbeinu again. And Rabbeinu says, look at this. Maze katavta. What did you write here? Halo ze sarti li biatmi. I told this to myself. How do you know this? That entire Torah of En Shum Yeosh was Rabbeinu's reinforcement to himself. That's the chidush. Rabbeinu, when he's telling everyone, En Shum Yeosh Ba'alam Kal, he's telling everyone because he went there first. That's why Rabbi נחman is a unique tzaddik. You know why? Because before he passed away, he said, Ani rotze leisha'er b'nechem. I want to be with you guys. I don't want to go to Gan Eden. It's not my avodah anymore. When Hashem prepared his palace in Shamayim after Rabbeinu went up, Rabbeinu said, no, I'm not going there. I'm staying in Gehinnom. Until all the nishamot are repaired. Because then I won't feel enough. I won't have done my job. That's the tzaddik we're talking about. Not a tzaddik who tells you to do this from this place and you're here. He's a tzaddik who tells you, no, I'm going to pick you up. And I'm here. I'm under you. I'm lifting you up myself. I'm with you in your avodat Hashem. Chazak ve'emat ba'avodatcha. Stay strong and courageous. That's what it is to be a tzaddik. Rabbi נחman says, you know what a real tzaddik is? Not someone who's here, but who doesn't understand the world. The bigger the tzaddik, the more he understands the problems of the world. The more he's able to be with you in your yisurim, your suffering. Rabbi נחman had to go through all the suffering and all the problems. He prayed to get through every place, to feel what the pain felt of every single Jew, to understand one thing, that no matter what, I'm with you. That's why. That's why Rabbeinu's Torah speaks to the generations. Because one thing, he's reinforcing us from every place. And that's the job. Rabbeinu said, Rak tahziku atmechem beyachad, ve'az tiyu anashim ksherim. The only thing you guys need to do is one thing. Reinforce each other like a real friend. Real friends reinforce each other. Like Rabbi Israel said, En gdolim, en ktanim, kulanu chaverim. There's no big, there's no small. We're only chaverim. That's what it means. Because when the Rebbe did the work, our job is to reinforce each other. Rabbi Israel, that was his job. Rabbi Israel went to France. He did things that no Bresler Chassid thought of. He went to Tel Aviv. He was the first Bresler Chassid to go to Tel Aviv. He saw a man walking in Tel Aviv, a prince almost, a lord from Holland. A Jewish guy. He moved out of Israel. He saw him looking at women across the street. He said, what are you doing? He started speaking to Rebbe Israel. Rebbe Israel, he said, what? The man looked at Rebbe Israel. He said, what will you understand? You're a Chassidut Perot. Rebbe Israel said, come, be my friend. Let me speak to you. They start speaking like this. Rebbe Israel ended up making him do tshuva. This man became Rabbi Isaac Yitzchak Zilberman, who wrote tens of books on Chassidei Breslev. Rabbi Israel went to France and said one thing. He didn't speak a word of French. His Hebrew was broken. You know what Rabbi Israel said in France on both trips? Yesh Rabbi Ba'olam. 3 words. And with that, families went from France to Eretz Israel. Families started making aliyah. When Uman opened up in 89, I think, after communism, there was 100 people from France. There was 300 people in Uman. There was 100 people from France in Uman that year. That's the Avodat Hashem of what it means. To go the low, to the high, it doesn't matter. I'm with you. There's a Rebbe in the world that's able to hold your hand and tell you, stay strong. And I'll finish with this, what is written down in Chaim Moran. I don't know if I think I might have lost it, but regardless, we get the inyan. We get the idea. If anyone has any inyanim, questions, this, that, if not, I think we touched on the point, but that's the idea.
Amazing.
Bezrat Hashem.
I was in the lowest, he brought me up.
We need to reinforce each other. That's the avodah. Reinforce each other. Chaverim. That's the main inyan. Bechaverim. Bezrat Hashem. Yalla, Chaverim. Bezrat Hashem. Des bonnes nouvelles. Bonne semaine. Chazak ve'ematz.